It does not know it is the last night. That is the first thing to understand. There is no decision, no awareness of what is coming, no preparation in the human sense of the word. And yet, everything it does on this final night before hibernation is different. The route is longer, the hunting more intense, the investigation of its nest more careful than it has been in weeks. Its body knows what its mind cannot. The chemistry of October has been building for weeks. Shorter days, colder nights. A hormonal signal so ancient it predates every other mammal on this planet. And tonight, without the hedgehog understanding why, that signal has reached its threshold. Tomorrow, it will not come out. But tonight, this last night, it will do something that looks from the outside like any other night. Except it isn't. And the details of what happens in these final hours tell us something profound about survival, biology, and the extraordinary precision of an animal that has been doing this for 15 million years. For weeks before the last night, the hedgehog's behavior has been shifting. Not dramatically, not in ways most observers would notice, but measurably, consistently, in ways that researchers monitoring hedgehog activity across autumn document every year. The nightly route has been getting longer since September, not because new territory is being explored. The route is established, the gardens are known, but the time spent at each stop has increased. The hunting intensity has increased. The calories consumed per night have increased. A hedgehog that was eating 70 to 80 slugs and beetles on a summer night is now consuming significantly more. Its body is directing it toward maximum caloric intake with an urgency it did not feel 3 months ago. This is the preparation, not conscious, not planned, biological. The signal comes from changes in day length detected through the eyes, triggering hormonal responses that alter metabolism, increase appetite, and begin directing excess calories toward fat storage, rather than immediate energy use. The hedgehog, on its last night before hibernation, has been building its fat reserve for 6 to 8 weeks. Every night of intensified feeding was part of this preparation. The fat reserve, now sitting beneath its skin, thickest around the back and flanks, is everything. It is the margin between surviving winter and not. On the final night before hibernation, feeding reaches its peak. Studies of tracked hedgehogs show that the last 1 to 3 nights before hibernation contain the highest feeding intensity of the entire year. The animal is not simply hungry. Its body is effectively running a final energy loading phase. Every stop on the route is worked in detail. Compost areas, damp soil patches rich in earthworms, and flower beds with reliable insect populations all receive extended attention. Feeding time increases at locations that would normally be visited briefly. Tonight, there is little selectivity. Earthworms, slugs, beetles, and larvae are all consumed. Usual preferences are reduced. Caloric intake becomes the only priority. Then, usually between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., a shift occurs. Feeding intensity drops abruptly. A productive site is left earlier than usual. The hedgehog does not move toward the next feeding location, but instead turns toward its nest. The final feast is over. Have you ever noticed a hedgehog in October behaving differently, feeding more intensely, or moving with more urgency than in summer? Write what you observed in the comments. The hedgehog returns to its nest, but does not enter immediately. Instead, it performs a more detailed inspection than at any other time of the year. It circles the entrance, investigates the surroundings, and carefully checks the interior. It is assessing 3 key conditions. Temperature? The nest must be cool enough to allow hibernation to begin, but not so cold that the body becomes unstable too early. Moisture. Dry material is essential for insulation, while wet leaf litter reduces effectiveness. Structure. The nest must still be intact, concealed, and undisturbed after previous preparation over weeks. The hedgehog has invested significant time building and maintaining this structure, adding materials and refining its shape over multiple visits. This final inspection is a last verification before commitment. If the nest is unsuitable, it will not be used. The hedgehog must then search for an alternative, which at this stage of the season is energetically costly and risky. If the nest is accepted, movement slows. The hedgehog no longer follows its feeding route. Instead, activity contracts around the nest area. It explores nearby structures, the log pile, leaf litter, and sheltered corners close to its chosen site. This appears to be a final environmental assessment, confirming that nothing in the immediate surroundings has changed in a way that could threaten the nest over the coming months. Its behavior suggests a level of importance placed on these checks beyond normal nightly activity, as if the stakes are biologically encoded. Between 4 a.m. and sunrise, the hedgehog enters the nest. It turns once or twice in a slow circle and settles. Body temperature begins to drop, first gradually, then more steadily. The final night ends. What happens in the hours after the hedgehog settles into its nest on the last night is one of the most extraordinary physiological processes in the mammalian world. The body temperature begins dropping at a rate of approximately 1 degree Celsius per hour in the early stages. The heart rate, normally between 190 and 280 beats per minute in an active hedgehog, begins to slow. Not gradually and smoothly, in stages, dropping to 100, then 60, then 30, eventually, in deep hibernation, falling below 20 beats per minute. Breathing follows a similar pattern. Active breathing rate of around 40 breaths per minute drops over the first 24 hours to a rate of fewer than 10. In deep hibernation, a hedgehog may take only 1 breath every few minutes. Each of these reductions saves energy. The metabolic rate of a deeply hibernating hedgehog is approximately 2 to 4% of its active metabolic rate. The animal is alive, but barely by the standards of its normal existence. The fat reserve built over 6 to 8 weeks of intensified autumn feeding is now the only energy source available. Every day of hibernation draws down that reserve. Every arousal, those dangerous partial wakings that occur through winter, accelerates the drawdown. The margin the hedgehog built on its last night, and in the weeks before it, is now all it has. Here is where the story becomes serious. Not every hedgehog that enters hibernation survives it. Researchers estimate that a large proportion of juveniles, often between 1/3 and 1/2 in their first year, do not survive their initial hibernation, primarily due to insufficient fat reserves. A juvenile entering hibernation below a critical threshold, around 450 to 500 grams, does not have enough stored energy to last until spring. The reserve runs out. The animal wakes too early and is too weak to recover. The final night before hibernation is therefore not just a feeding event. It is the end point of a 6 to 8 week survival process. Every night of autumn feeding contributes to that reserve. Every productive garden, compost heap, water source, and connected route that remains accessible plays a role in whether the threshold is reached. The hedgehog does not perceive this as a calculation, but the calculation exists nonetheless, and the final night is where the result is effectively set. Knowing that the hedgehog in your garden during October is in the final phase of a survival process, where each night of feeding contributes to whether it survives winter, does it change how you think about your garden in autumn? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. The nest it enters on its final night is more than shelter. It is a carefully built survival structure called a Hibernaculum. These nests are constructed from dry leaves, grass, and sometimes moss, usually placed under protective structures such as log piles, sheds, dense shrubs, or leaf heaps against walls. The structure is layered, a loose outer layer that traps insulating air, and a tighter inner chamber that remains dry and stable. The entrance is shaped to reduce cold airflow while still allowing minimal gas exchange. Inside, the temperature remains slightly higher and far more stable than the surrounding environment, which is critical for survival during deep torpor. The hedgehog builds and maintains this structure itself over weeks, carrying material, adjusting shape, and testing conditions repeatedly. The final inspection is not about construction. It is about confirmation that the structure still works, that weather or disturbance has not compromised it, and that it is ready for the months ahead. After the last night, your garden changes. Not visibly, not in any way you would notice walking through it on a November morning, but something that was active in it, something that moved through it every night, that read its chemical history, that knew its every corner and gap and resource, is now still. The hedgehog is there, beneath the shed, inside the log pile, under the leaf heap in the corner. But it is not present in any active sense. Its root is unused. The gaps it crossed every night are quiet. The damp corner where it hunted earthworms is undisturbed. The water dish it drank from is frozen and then thawed and frozen again, visited now only by birds. The garden continues without it. And the hedgehog, in its hibernaculum, continues without the garden. Its body runs on its reserves. Its temperature tracks the ambient air with a slight lag. Its heart beats slowly in the dark. It does not dream. Mammalian dreaming requires a level of neural activity that hibernation suppresses. It simply continues, the minimum version of continuing, until the temperature signals change, until the day length registers differently, until the hormonal counter that began the process reverses it, and the hedgehog wakes. The last night before hibernation is not dramatic. From the outside, it looks almost like any other October night. A hedgehog feeding in a garden, moving through its route, returning to its nest. But the intensity is different. The thoroughness is different. The final nest inspection, the contracting circles of movement, the settling in the early hours before dawn. These are not ordinary. They are the conclusion of a 6-month survival arc. From the first warm nights of April, through the long feeding summer, through the intensified autumn loading, to this final night, every element has been building toward the reserve that now sits beneath the hedgehog's skin. Whether that reserve is enough will only become clear in spring, when the temperature rises, when the signals reverse, when the hedgehog that entered its nest on this last night either emerges, thin, urgent, immediately hungry, or does not emerge at all. Your garden will not know which until it happens, but it will wait. The gap in your fence will be there. The log pile will still hold the nest. The water dish, if you replace it in spring, will be there when the hedgehog needs it. And if the reserve was enough, if the last night's feeding, and the weeks before it, and the garden that made it possible were sufficient, something will come back through that gap, alive, having crossed the longest night of all. If you knew with certainty that a hedgehog was hibernating in your garden right now, beneath your shed, inside your log pile, under your leaf heap, would it change anything about how you treat that space this winter? Leave your answer below. Every video on this channel is built on documented research. Real biology, real stakes, no exaggeration. If that is what brought you here, you already know what to do.